When Emily met Daniel, she thought she had stumbled upon the kind of love that only happens in movies, unexpected, consuming, perfectly timed. He was calm, confident, and attentive in a way that made the rest of the world blur around him. They met at a small art gallery in Seattle, both standing before a photograph of a woman in the rain, and his first words to her were, "She doesn't look sad. She looks like she's waiting for something she doesn't know is coming." There was something in the softness of his voice, in the way he studied her reactions, that made Emily feel seen for the first time in years. Within weeks, he seemed to know everything about her, how she liked her tea, the kind of books she collected but never finished, the way she hummed when she was thinking. He appeared to fit perfectly into her life, anticipating her needs before she even voiced them. When he proposed 6 months later, her friends warned her she was moving too fast, but Emily brushed it off. Daniel was quiet, respectful, and kind. His life before her was a blur of vague details. He said he'd grown up in different towns, moved for his father's work, lost both parents early, but she never pressed for more. They married in Oregon in a private ceremony by a mist-covered lake. He chose to place an isolated cottage surrounded by woods, claiming it reminded him of summers from his childhood. The days after the wedding were peaceful. Daniel spent hours fixing little things in the house, humming unfamiliar tunes, while Emily wrote in her journal and planned their new life. It was the kind of stillness that feels almost sacred. Until the day she went into the attic. The rain had been falling since morning, and Daniel had gone into town. Emily climbed the narrow staircase to find a frame for their wedding photo. The attic smelled of cedar and dust, sunlight slipping in through a small round window. Near the back was a leather chest tied with string. Inside were neat stacks of photographs, labeled in careful handwriting, 1997 camp, 2002 home, 2006 graduation. She smiled at how organized he was until she saw the last bundle labeled the day she arrived. Her stomach tightened. She untied it, and as the photos spilled out, one made her breath stop. A young girl, maybe 8 or 9, stood in a yard beside a crooked tree. She wore a faded blue dress and had a thin scar on her chin, the same scar Emily had carried since falling from a bike at 8. The girl in the picture was her, exactly her. The same eyes, the same faint smile, even the same wooden fence she remembered from her childhood. Home in Colorado. She turned the picture over, her hands shaking. On the back, in Daniel's handwriting, were 3 words. The day she arrived. That night, she didn't sleep. Daniel's breathing beside her was slow, steady, too calm. She thought of every logical explanation. Maybe a coincidence, maybe an old family friend. But none fit. The next morning she asked quietly over breakfast, "Where did you get those old photos?" He looked up, expression unreadable. "What photos?" she said. "The ones in the attic. There was one of me in them." For a heartbeat he didn't blink, and then he smiled, a slow, knowing smile. "Oh," he said softly, "you found that." Then he went back to his coffee. She tried to laugh it off, but her hands were trembling. Later, when she returned to the attic, the chest was gone. Only a single Polaroid remained on the floor of her, taken that very morning, holding her coffee cup. On the back were 4 words. The day she remembered. Fear pressed at her ribs that night. Daniel acted normal, cooking dinner, talking about plans for a garden. She pretended to, waiting for a chance to search the house. When he went to bed, she checked his office. The drawers were locked except one containing an old camera and rolls of undeveloped film. In a corner lay a stack of letters tied with ribbon addressed to E.M. Her initials, dated years before they'd met. None were opened. Each envelope had a date that corresponded to moments from her life graduation, her mother's death, even a childhood birthday. He couldn't possibly have known those things, unless he had been watching long before they'd met. A sudden creak from upstairs made her freeze. "Emily," Daniel's voice floated down, calm and drowsy. "What are you doing?" she whispered. "Just checking the locks." He smiled when she returned to bed, wrapped an arm around her, and said, Good, you can never be too careful. The next morning, she went to the post office under the excuse of mailing a letter, but Daniel's car was already parked outside. He was waiting. You forgot your wallet, he said, holding it out. His tone was gentle, but his eyes didn't match the smile. From that day, she realized she was never alone. Wherever she went, Daniel seemed nearby, appearing at the market, on the path behind the cottage, even outside. The library where she thought she could think clearly. Each time he greeted her like it was coincidence. Each time she felt her heart hammer harder. A week later, she decided to leave. She packed quietly while he was in town, but when she reached her phone, it was gone. Her car keys too. Panic set in. Then she noticed the Polaroid camera on the table. A new photo had printed automatically, sliding out with a soft mechanical whir. In the image, she was standing by the window, suitcase half sipped, eyes wide, exactly as she was at that moment. On the back was written, "The day she tried, that night she confronted him." "How long have you known me?" she asked. "Since before you were born," he said calmly. "Your mother was my first subject." Emily stumbled back. Subject? He nodded. "I study memory, the kind that travels through generations. I watched you grow up. You used to look out the window at the same hour every evening. I called it your arrival time." He stepped closer, voice lowering. "When I met you at the gallery, I wanted to see if you'd recognize me. And you did, though you didn't know why." Emily shook her head, tears blurring her sight. "You're lying." He smiled faintly. "Then how did I know about the scar, or the dress, or the song you hummed the night your father left?" She couldn't breathe. She ran. The front door was bolted from the outside windows, nailed shut. He followed slowly, his footsteps measured, calm. "Don't be afraid," he whispered. "You are always meant to find me again." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a photograph, an old one, creased and faded, of a woman who looked almost identical to Emily, standing beside a young boy. "That's my mother," he said, "and that little boy is me. She used to tell me stories about a girl who'd come for me one day just like her. I didn't believe her until I found your picture." He held it out gently like an offering. "You see, it was fate." Emily grabbed the camera from the table and hurled it at him. It shattered, scattering shards of plastic and old film. Daniel flinched, then laughed softly. "You can break the lens," he said. "But the picture's already taken." She fled to the attic, desperate, searching for any way out. There was none, only boxes of film and a single open journal on the table. Inside, rows of notes, dates, and sketches, each one of her face. Some from childhood, some recent. The last entry read, "Tomorrow, she remembers everything." Footsteps behind her, Daniel's voice. "I didn't mean to scare you. I only wanted to keep you where you belonged." Emily turned, clutching the journal. "You don't know me," she whispered. He tilted his head. "I know you better than you know yourself. You've lived here before. You just forgot." For a moment, the world tilted. Memories flickered, dreams of this house, the lake, the tree by the water. Impossible, but familiar. She backed toward the window, glass cold against her palms. "Stay away." He stopped, eyes sad. "You'll wake up soon. You always do." Then everything went white. Wince. Emily opened her eyes. She was lying on the floor, morning light pouring through the window. The house was silent. No sign of Daniel. She stumbled outside barefoot and ran down the path to the road. A passing driver stopped and called the police. They searched the house. There was no Daniel, no photos, no journal, just dust and an empty attic. The neighbors said the cottage had been abandoned for years. Weeks later, trying to rebuild her life, Emily sorted through her old family albums at her mother's home. Near the back, tucked behind a page, was a photograph she didn't remember placing there. It showed a man standing beside a lake, holding a camera, smiling. Behind him, faint in the reflection of the water, she saw herself older, wearing the same dress from the wedding. On the back were 4 words written in familiar handwriting: "The day she returned."